If you think just because I haven't uploaded in a little while that I haven't been getting busy on the 1988 Honda Accord with the LS swap, that is far from the truth. If you can see the motor, every single thing is painted, finished out, fully built, looking phenomenal. We still got to put the valve covers on, but in this video, my next main goal is for this project is I want to get the bay completely ready, the bay completely painted, and the motor in for the final time. So I want to focus on getting those things knocked out, and if you're just trying to focus on getting your engine bay ready for paint, you can pick up some tips and tricks along the way. It's gonna be a good one.
And now, you're watching the If You Didn't Put a Grilled Cheese in the VCR When You Were a Kid, Were You Even Alive in the 90s channel of YouTube. Welcome to Bodie Vision.
God dang, man. You see how nice these look? These are the valve covers. What we gotta do is, I guess, we just gotta go ahead and take the gaskets, throw them on there, and then we have the coil packs to put on. And this thing's going to be looking phenomenal. Anyways, hey, so what is up and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on yet another video. So this engine bay, if this was your car and you wanted to get it to this point or to the point where my bay currently is, all that you'd have to do is completely pressure wash your bay, spend a whole bunch of time with the pressure washer and some degreaser, pressure wash, degreaser, pressure wash, scrub it. The main thing is you just want to get all the engine gunk out of there. And the reason why my bay looks like this right now, that's because I did all kinds of metal work, and that raw metal I wanted to put an epoxy primer over it. But if you're just, you know, scuffing down your bay and gonna repaint it, you don't need to worry about that. And then your bay is about where mine is right now. Now before we get too much into the bay, I want to focus on the motor. So you just saw the valve covers. These absolute beauts, this color, some of you might recognize this paint. I had some paint left over from a Subaru that I painted a while ago. Actually, Taylor Ray's GC8, so that's gonna work phenomenally. So at this point, we just gotta get the gaskets thrown on there. And this comes with the two gaskets. And then also the gaskets for the little bolts. But before I actually throw these on, there's a bunch of overspray inside, and that's just the nature of it. So I want to go ahead and get them wiped out, make sure they're nice and clean. And this is just a wax and grease remover. Just gonna go ahead and clean it out. And these are used valve covers. I mean, they look super good, but I spent a long time cleaning them out. And that's quite frankly why I haven't uploaded in a little while. Just because I've been busy cleaning stuff, wiping stuff, getting stuff looking good to the point where I feel like I can show you guys good progress. And both of these gaskets are the same, so you don't got to worry about it. And then if you can see, that little channel actually goes inside. So this is hard to mess up. Just put the gasket on and go for it. Making sure my gasket's holding in place. Looks good. Alright, that seems solid. Now let's put on the other one, and then I'll grab the coil packs, also painted. Well, the brackets. The brackets are also painted. So also, I don't know if you saw MPC hardware all over the motor, the entire front cover, everything, the intake manifold, the fuel rail, all of it is the MPC hardware. LS hardware, check the description down below for the MPC offerings that I got going on for you. So now we got the coil packs to put on, and that's going to be new fresh hardware as well. So with this, it's a shame that the coil packs cover up the nice valve covers, but either way, the coil pack bracket looks good, valve covers look good. Everything looks good, so I can't complain about anything at all. I know you can relocate them, but it's not in the budget right now. This will look good. Since I'm not going to be running the plastic covers, these are specific bolts for those plastic covers to clip into, so I'm just going to throw these brand new hex bolts in as well. Looking really solid. Now you might be wondering if I went with MPC for the entire motor, If I went with MPC for the entire motor, why didn't I do those with the MPC bolts? I just prefer the regular old hex head bolts up there. I like it a little bit better for simplicity. Now everything on here that has MPC bolts, we're not planning on taking them off anytime in the near future. Valve covers, like I said, I just prefer the hex bolts. Dude, this thing is looking phenomenal. One thing that sticks out like a sore thumb to me though is that power steering pump reservoir. I might switch that out. Maybe even before the motor goes in, because everything else looking phenomenal. So speaking of this red paint, that's not all that's red. If you can see over here, we actually had a little more paint left over than what you might have thought. Boom, dude. Look at the subframe, GTO subframe, all red, top and bottom. I don't know how well you can see it. You can see it pretty good over here. That is crazy nice, really good. Just leave a like on the video right now if you think this is good. So the valve covers are gonna match the subframe. The exterior color of the car is going to be, you'll find out soon. Now that the motor's pretty much done, I want to get back to the original premise of this video and the title, prepping an engine bay for paint. Now this car is different than your car, of course, but one thing that you got to do if you want to make any changes in the engine bay, for example, if you're going to weld in any brackets, cut out any brackets, weld in holes, shave holes, grind anything down, you want to do that all before. Now you can primer, and then if you want to do more stuff, you can go ahead and address that and then prime again. Then once you sand it smooth, that's all good. And one of the main reasons why you might want to primer is if you have any raw metal, you don't want it to rust as you're working, because then you're just working backwards. So with this car in particular, I had to figure out a couple of things. The clutch that was in here before, it was a cable driven clutch or cable clutch, and now we're going to a hydro clutch. So this pedal, I actually ripped it out of the donor car for this vehicle. Now if you don't know, 98% of the things that I'm using are from a 2004 GTO that had a 6-speed in it. So the transmission that I'm using, everything that I'm using is from said GTO. So I had to go ahead and get all this figured out. So this I want in the engine bay, the master cylinder, and that had to have some holes cut out. So let me just get this thrown in and then I'll show you. So with this pedal, as it was mounted in the GTO, there's just bolts that went up and they threaded into the car. And then also over here, there was a different bracket that reaches it around. Now I don't have the room for that additional bracket. So what I did is I cut that off and then I just welded a new piece of metal on right there and then drilled a hole in it. And then I found 3 bolts. Well, it was actually the bolts that were going upwards. I had them facing down and I put nuts on the bottom. I put it up exactly where I wanted it, and then I tack welded those bolts downward, took off the nuts, the bolts stayed, then I finish welded the bolts up top. So now there's just studs sticking down, so as soon as I throw this up, all I have to do is I line it up with the studs, then I put those nuts on the bottom, and that's exactly how I integrated it to mount in there. And then as far as this, I'll show you that in the engine bay. That's 1. That's 2. That's 3. So if you can see on the engine bay side, what's right here, I cut out all of the old stuff. There was all kinds of holes and stuff for fuel lines to run through, and I'm not going to be using any of that. I needed this to work. So what I ended up doing is I took the pedal assembly, I sat it down on a piece of metal, I perfectly traced out this shape, and then I took a step bit that had the exact same diameter as this, so that way I could match the bore of this master cylinder. Then I drilled that out, drilled these 2 holes. So then I took that piece of sheet metal with this cut out, and then I placed it in here. Once that was in there, once everything was lined up, I tacked it in. Then I removed everything, then I welded it out completely, epoxy primed it, And here we are. And then I'm still gonna finish it out a little bit. Needs a little bit of seam sealer. Keep in mind, it's just an engine bay. We want it to look good, but it's just an engine bay. So as I'm laying out this filler, I briefly wanted to touch on body filler with you. So when it comes to body fillers, there's many different ones on the market that you can choose from. I just have 3 laid out in front of us that I had sitting around. Well, actually, I just bought this. But either way, this one is going to be the thickest. This is going to be a medium or a lightweight filler. And this is going to be a glaze, a flowable glaze. Now, the difference is this one has a consistency like a chunky peanut butter. This is really thick stuff, and I bought this to mold on some over fenders on an Acura RSX quite a while ago. It had a really big seam that we had to get rid of, and we wanted to be strong. Also, it was fiberglass, and this is a fiberglass laced filler. So to link the fiberglass to the body with the fiberglass lace filler, that's what I use that for. I'm not even going to be touching this at all for this project. So moving on to the one that I'm actually using, you just saw me spread this out. This one, the consistency is more like a soft serve ice cream or even a Frosty, and this is what I'm starting off with. It's kind of thin, but kind of thick, easy to spread around, easy to sand. This is considered a lightweight body filler. And then after that one, this is really thin. This is just some glazing putty, and this is the consistency of some maybe yogurt. So this one's gonna do the majority of the filling. This one is going to fill in all those little pinholes. That's what this is great for. And this, we're not even gonna use this on this project. Now, each one of these body fillers is going to come with its own hardener. Now on the can, it calls for mixing it at 2%. So for every 100% of your mix, 98% of it should be filler, 2% should be harder. Now that's kind of hard to do. Now what I've always done is for every golf ball amount of filler, I'll do 1 pea size amount of hardener. You know, like your green peas, that's how much hardener you should do. And also, it doesn't really matter. And also, the temperature and humidity, a whole bunch of things affect how fast it's going to kick off. So right now it's a little warm in the shop, so I'm putting a little bit less hardener, and just adjust as you go. If you put a little bit and you found that you didn't have enough work time and it kicked off too quick, next time you mix it up, just do a little bit less. Or if you have found that you're waiting forever to start sanding it because it's just not kicking off or firming up, then put a little bit more hardener next time. It doesn't really matter, just adjust as you go and just go for it. So once I actually have that filler spread out, what I'm starting with is a 180. I'm just using a 180 grit sandpaper to knock everything down. Then I'm gonna go over it with a 220 before primer. And I think that should be about it. And now also really quickly, I wanted to mention, we have 2 new shirts on the site. This one, real small, real subtle design. I had a lot of guys asking for something a little bit more subtle. So if you're into that, that's the design for you, Bodie Vision Weld Fab Paint. And then this one I've actually been wearing for quite a while, the Midnight Motoring tee. Now on the website right now for today and tomorrow, the purchase of any 1 shirt will come with a free sticker. The purchase of any 2 items will come with a 3-pack of stickers for absolutely free. Plug over, back to work. So moving right along with the trend of figuring everything out before we can paint the bay, some things that I still need to do is we got the radiator that we got to get mounted before we can paint it. Also, my expansion tank is on the way, and I just picked this up. This is actually a auxiliary heater core with a fan, so that's all a self-contained unit. It's just going to sit right behind the dash, and then it comes with a little plug. You can adjust 3 different speeds of how fast you want this to be. Now in Florida, I don't really need a heater, but if it's raining and my windows are fogging up on the inside, I want to be able to use defrost. And if I'm taking this car out of state, which I do plan on doing if it's going to be cold, I would like to have heat. AC, we'll just roll the windows down. So I'll be figuring all of that out in the next video. So like this video if you can do that for me, subscribe if you're into what you're seeing, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm out.